That's quite big.
Piracy is insane in Victoria Free's Great Wave DLC, and by the time I'm done, I'll be earning 100k by just piracy alone. In today's video, I want to try to resurrect the Barbary Coast and her corsairs into a unified, industrialized Maghreb. Mascara will be our nation of choice today, as I won't lie, this run already cost me 4 hours of research just trying to avoid the big blue blob. By the turn of the 19th century, the Barbary Coast was not the same hive of corsairs and piracy that it was in the prior centuries. Under waning Ottoman rule in Fundin, the corsairs were slowly losing ground to the European powers as they brought their professional navies to bear in order to counter their piracy. Piracy would all but stop by 1816 as a result of the Second Barbary War, and would be completely halted by the French conquest of Algiers in 1830. But assuming that Algeria had recovered from her precarious situation, what could have happened? Our first goal is to build up an arms industry to support the line infantry that Mascara starts the game with. An additional logging camp, tool and workshop, and iron mine will all be a good investment at the start. Another crucial part of our intro is securing both Constantine and Ait Abbas. Constantine, as a province, has the rest of the materials we need to fully industrialize, and losing any of it to the French would be an immediate restart as far as I'm concerned. Next, we need to improve relations with Russia and Egypt, as these two will be our main allies during this campaign. We also rival a good portion of West Africa as a way of making free influence, because let's be honest, those guys can't do anything to us. And using this newfound influence, we can also start improving with the UK and Spain. I want these guys as backup in case we have to have an emergency sway against French aggression. The conquest of both goes easily enough for us as we have line infantry from the start of the game. And even poorly supplied line infantry do wonders against the regulars. Our next major goal is to obtain a guarantee of independence from the Russians. I've noticed that the UK in this patch likes to disband his army and navy all the time, so the Russians will be my great power sponsor of choice. Securing the treaty with the Russians would cost me an embassy and one of my precious boats, but in all honesty, with my navy's size at the moment, I wouldn't be able to pirate for long anyway, so I go ahead and use them as bargaining pieces. The last piece of my master plan is to secure investment rights with as many nations as possible, as I don't really have the materials nor the funds to go hard into a construction industry in this game. So instead, I'll focus my industry on building military supplies in order to supply both my army and my navy in preparation for the inevitable war with France, while the European powers can fight over who gets to build what in Algeria. With our opening moves complete, our next immediate goal is to take Morocco, as we need to prevent any further French influence on the continent. Morocco will be their next target as we have Russian protection, so we get lucky in that they get a minus prestige event, putting their rank below us, allowing us to make them a tributary instead of forcing us to take each state. This saves us a lot of infamy generation and will stop the other European powers from getting involved in any wars. Between no outside intervention and our line infantry now fully supplied, the war goes well for us and we're able to easily win against the Moroccans. The success in Morocco emboldens me, and I get started on pirating the Mediterranean just to see how the mechanic works. And I immediately get killed by French ships, but even for the fleeting moment, we can see that there's income to be made. In the meantime, as I figure out the ship designer, I take the time to clean up our borders by making Touggourt a tributary as well. It has the added benefit of curtailing any Ottoman influence in the Maghreb, and during this time, we're also going to be increasing our relations with the Egyptians in order to make sure that the Ottomans are neutered fully this campaign. It's during this time that we also start the Second Moroccan War, in order to reduce their autonomy. I want to be able to incorporate the Moroccan lands as soon as we can, in order to benefit from their gold mines and getting those coal mines built up. Now, with all of our land grabs and power seizures out of the way, the first step to our massive pirate fleet is to build up the infrastructure to support it. This means, in addition to our arms industries, we'll also need to set up steel and motor industries in Algiers. Now, with everything slowly building up, we can finally start to design on our ships. But we're stuck on sailing ships until we actually get the research for ironclads. I max out all of our options for our new ship with a line, but I don't realize how the template system works immediately, and so we actually build baseline frigates instead of our maxed out schooners. I do realize this by the time we build the ironclads, so I promise I will show off the naval system properly at some point in this video, but right now I kind of made a mistake. We're also starting our colonization of the Western Sahara at this time. I tried out the new colonial claim system, as with Morocco gone, this means the Europeans would technically be able to muscle in on our area. So hopefully this means we'll be able to claim the entire Sahara for ourselves, and while we technically don't need those areas to form the Maghreb later on, I like having clean borders. It's around this time as well that Spain offers me a fantastic deal to guarantee my independence, and we gladly accept that to make sure France does not come after us. The next major event we run into is just the complete collapse of the Ottoman Empire. It seems they failed to complete their Tanzimates in time, which is strange, as in most games I usually see the Ottomans become the #1 great power in this patch. The more important part of their fall, however, is that we now have access to Tunisia and Tripolitania, and we need to move fast to secure them before the Europeans or the Egyptians smell blood in the water. The war with Tunis is easy, but I can commend them for at least putting up an actual fight compared to the other nations we've fought so far. We take the province directly and then immediately go to war to make Tripolitania a tributary. With the entire Maghreb secured, the only thing standing in our way now is to remove French influence from the region. Our moment arrives when the Germans decide to unify and declare war on France for Alsace-Lorraine. I had just sent some pirates to the Baltic Sea in order to get the Martin Anward achievement, and I noticed that Spain decided to join the German side, so I decided, it's time for my own war against France. We declare in order to release Algeria, as it's less infamy than trying to take each state individually. The French troops are absolutely better than ours, but with their focus divided between the German, Spanish, and Algerian borders, we're able to outnumber them significantly and win a few early battles. We do start losing battles as the French dedicate more troops, but between our Navy convoy raiding them and the total occupation of their homeland by the German-Spanish alliance, we are able to negotiate a deal to secure the release of Algeria. Unfortunately, the footage from it got corrupted and I really don't want to have to redo this entire run. Just a little while later, they peace out with the Germans, and I realized how lucky I got that I peaced out early enough to not have to fight all of France's military might, because while their navy was completely destroyed after this war, their army was still above 200 regiments. It's also around this time that I really started to push naval infrastructure in my nation, put in massive investments into naval administration buildings and shipyards in order to build up the fleets I would need to commit piracy around the world. This build-up is inspired by two things. The video idea, obviously, as imagine if I did all this work and did this entire run and then just forget that I have to actually pirate the entire world. That would be pretty sick. And the fact that France's navy was reduced to rubble in that last war, as I just mentioned, with them having a grand total of 0 ships. I immediately set my fleet out to the Western Mediterranean in order to pirate the now defenseless coasts, and it is insane just how much money I can make off of one fleet. Okay. So there's a lot of small things that happened between our war with France and us developing ironclads, but instead of addressing each one, I'm just going to do a quick fire round. We got interventionism, which unfortunately puts us on a timer for earning recognition, so I started harming relations with all the great powers as I do not want to lose out on the piracy ability. Next, we invest into our pirate-leading future and we start up the state-sponsored Corsairs Inc., which will give a monopoly for all the sawmills and shipyards in our nation. For the record, by this point pre-pirate buildup, we're already generating 40k of income a week just from piracy. That's what's fun in all of this. Next, we reduce Tripoli's autonomy, just for the hell of it, why not? It's fun. After that, we form an Eastern Mediterranean fleet in order to get more piracy income. Seriously, it's actually ridiculous at this point. And finally, we also expand the army just a smidge so we can resist the European powers just a little bit easier. With piracy bringing in an abundance of goods and cash flow, I expand our construction sector in order to eventually build up an even larger shipping industry. Yeah, I know, I'm a one-trick pony. It's during this time that I've also found out that when goods are pirated, they're both added to your market and their value added to your treasury, which is insanely overpowered in my opinion. While I'm sure this could cause problems in the future, I've not gotten that far in the script yet, so keep watching and let me know in the comments if it becomes one. I then continue on, and with the annexation of the released vassal Algeria, I can now form Algeria myself. With the invaders banished from Algerian shores and order restored across the land, Sultan Abdelkadir ponders his next move. What shall become of Algeria? Abdelkadir el-Diyajari dismounts his horse in front of the days-old palace, its crumbling walls pockmarked with shot and bullet holes, some recent, some older than even Abdelkadir himself. Just past the gate, a group of Algerian regulars can be seen hauling captured French cannon onto carts, supervised by a dour-looking captain shouting orders in a thick Turkish accent, while a group of Kabylian warriors are rolling dice in the courtyard, playing for what seems to be an officer's pocket watch. I decided to stay as a monarchy instead of swapping to theocracy with the event in order to continue our liberalization into an eventual pirate republic, alongside also grabbing Welfoden to represent that more successful pirates have more political clout. It's after we achieve this as well that I realize I need to pad out the video time, so let's discuss the history of Algeria and the Barbary Coast. So, to start, the term Barbary Coast is actually an exonym for the portion of the Maghreb that was heavily involved in piracy. It refers to the Berbers of the region, despite there being multiple other ethnic groups as well. Now, rarely was the area under a monolithic control, with the region usually being split between 4 main powers: Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Tripolitania. Obviously by the 1800s, piracy was on the out as French influence in the region put a stop to the majority of the corsairs. But just a century earlier, piracy was an economic lifeline for the region, with the slave trade being both the livelihood of many and also religiously significant as a form of jihad against the Christians of Europe. Piracy peaked economically in the 1600s when the Algerian fleet was numbered in the hundreds and employed around 25% of the city of Algiers' population. This is something we actually recreated in the video, which is very surprising to me, albeit being 200 years later. It's finally time for us to develop a proper pirate fleet. With the advent of torpedo boats and early ironclads, it's apparent to me that screening is now very important. So I followed a guide I found on Reddit by Order Liberal that explains the ratios that fleets should follow at each step of technology. So similar to our other ships, we just maxed out all stats for ironclads, iron frigates, and torpedo boats. Basically, the system works on a balance of vulnerability versus screening. Basically, your screens soak up enemy torpedoes, allowing your capital ships to absolutely decimate everything else on the field of battle. So in this case, I have an early ironclad, which is my heavy hitter, alongside some iron frigates and torpedo boats, which I use for screening and damage. Now eventually, I do scale these fleets up as Europe develops more boats, but while they're still in the age of sail, we can just kind of run through them with the ironclads, and so I decided it's enough to send them out into the world and restart the golden age of piracy. Now, do keep in mind, piracy increases your vulnerability, so I do add more screens over time to make sure that nothing's getting caught out. I start this process by filling out my fleets to the Mediterranean as France begins to rebuild its fleet with ironclads, and so it was a race against time to get as much value as I could out of the Mediterranean, while also killing off France's small attempts at hunting our pirates. The Ottomans during this time also rivaled me and were attempting to hunt my pirates, but they only ever had sailing ships, so they were essentially just feeding their shipping economy into my ironclads. I've noticed that the AI will not push nearly enough tonnage onto their hunt pirate missions, and this results in them just feeding their newly built ships to my pirates, though each time they take out a torpedo boat, so I'd love to see an auto-reinforce mechanic for my fleets, similar to how the army system is handled. Alright, with the video's runtime padded out now, it's around now that I start setting up the rest of the fleets needed to pirate the globe, with notable examples being in the Baltic, the Atlantic Gap, the Caribbean, and the English Channel. Now, with the way piracy works in this game, ships only decide to take a few lanes every now and then, and those are the ones you want to target, and usually they're in the chokehold areas, like the Atlantic Gap, or the Suez, or the Mediterranean's Gibraltar. So we really only need to hit the essential shipping lanes, and we can safely ignore a good majority of the sea nodes, which aren't considered essential, despite the fact that they're next to vital ports. I'm still not sure how it works, but I do eventually try to go for every sea node just to be a funny little guy, but it's not economical in all honesty. Okay, so I've skipped ahead a little bit as I realized halfway through writing the script that Victoria Free is hard to make entertaining to an audience. It's fun to play, not so much fun to watch. So essentially, all I've done for the last 4 years of gameplay is just make more fleets that I sent out around the world in order to get as many of the straits and sea nodes as possible, like I mentioned earlier. This is where piracy's woes finally really rear their ugly heads. You can pretty much suppress the price of goods so much that you actually run out of demand, which causes your GDP to shrink over time as you really don't need to produce anything when you can just steal it. The good news about this, of course, being that you get a substantial boost to your treasury, and the standard of living did raise at least, but overall it does harm you more economically to rely on piracy. I also have a save where I accidentally got recognition, which arguably staving that off was the hardest part about this run, by the way, as every GP insisted on being friends with me, and it caught up to me when Brazil snuck into GP and immediately forced me into signing a treaty I didn't want. Which did allow me to get the Algeria achievement at least, where you form Algeria and become a major power, but this also caused the issue of my piracy missions being maintained, while not being able to be restarted, so anytime I'd lose a battle to like a British fleet or a French fleet, I would no longer be able to pirate those nodes. From what I heard, they did fix this in the latest patch, but all of this footage was from the day 1 Great Wave release, so any bugs that you see are from release. They may have been patched by now, I'm not going to go through every one in chat. However though, on the same topic, I did make an incredible amount of money if I reload a save, up to about 360k. But afterwards, it would start to trickle down as I assumed some goods either got lost in the void or processed into the market. Still not sure why or how that works, as it was very inconsistent. All I know is that if I needed a quick cash injection, I would reload a save, get about 2 weeks of 300k, and then it would dip back down to about 100. Regardless of the issues with the update, if you liked today's video, please let me know in the comments below. I might cover more Victoria Free content when the inspiration strikes, but as I mentioned earlier, I find it much more difficult to make content or challenge runs in this game than the other Paradox games, as the gameplay loop is so much more formulaic. Anyway, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.